You're listening to the Anxious Scholar Podcast, a podcast for anxious scholars. If you're a high school student who can't wait to go to university, but also is kind of overwhelmed with lots of unanswered questions like me, then you've definitely come to the right place. On this podcast, I sit down with EGM alumni while they share valuable advice from this exciting journey of theirs that we have yet to take. I really hope you'll enjoy this episode and learn lots of useful information about the college application process, unis, and higher education in general. Hello everyone and welcome to the podcast. I'm here today with my guest Marc, who graduated from EGM in 2020. He then entered King's College in September where he chose to pursue the War Studies degree, which focuses on the conflict side of international relations, military history, and politics. On the side, Marc is also in the French Army Reserve, where every month he goes to an army base and does military training for 3 days. I really hope you'll be as excited to learn all about his interesting college experience as I am. I've already talked to students doing Grande École and double diplomas, but this uni and army program is totally new for me, so thank you so much for agreeing to come over and share your experience with us. It's really good to have you, Marc.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Could you start by saying a few words about yourself and your background?
Right, so my name's Marc. I've been at EJM for a very long time. I entered in kindergarten. I lived in New York for 2 years, 6e, 5e, so I wasn't there for 2 years. Then I came back, I just moved to London about 2.5 years ago now, so it's been quite a while. I just went to the alumni event. It was pretty cool to come back to school. So about me, as you said, I do War Studies, really cool program. I can't wait to explain more about it because I know a lot of students don't really know what it is. They kind of hesitate, so I'm here to tell you that it's great. It's absolutely awesome. I get excited. I do the Army as well. That's something I started last April, and not a lot of people know about it. And it's quite strange for foreign students, so people who study abroad, to actually go to the French Army Reserve. But it's really interesting, and I think there's a lot of people who should know about it because it's a pretty cool thing, So I'll explain more about that. But kind of just more generally about me, I'm totally French. I know a few languages. I did some cool things at school, but I think we're going to have questions about that later. So I think, you introduced me perfectly.
Thank you, Marc. We'll definitely go back to talking about your university degree and the Army activities that you're doing in England. But first, could you say, in what grade you started to think about college applications, in general, and do research about it?
Right. So my mom dragged me to the first kind of university information session in 3e or seconde, I think. And I kind of went there again every year. It's better if you kind of start thinking about it early, because of course, the grades start counting and stuff, but you shouldn't really worry too much about that. I think, once you're in seconde, it's only natural that you're going to start thinking about what you're going to do later. You're going to talk about it with your parents. You might want to talk about it with teachers, see what they think, what your strengths are, where you can want to apply, because it is your future, so you should be excited about it. So I think by seconde, you should definitely be starting to think about what you want to do.
And did you visit any universities on Open Doors Day?
I did. I visited LSE in première, which was interesting, to say the least. It was, it's a good idea to kind of visit the universities, but whatever happens, you're only going to learn so much when you go there. And, if you're going to apply to the US, I don't know if it's that necessary to go and check it out. So I think, wherever you go, the universities are always pretty fun. Even universities you haven't really heard about, St. Andrews, stuff that's really far away. From my experience and the friends who go there, everything's, a good place. So wherever you go, if you want to go, see the universities, it's a good idea, but it's definitely not necessary. So it's up to you, really.
And did you find that productive for yourself?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I got information on the programs and stuff. But there's definitely plenty of ways, if you're curious, to just contact the admissions people there directly, or the teachers, or even students who go to the university, the alumni, friends of your brothers, sisters, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it is enriching, but it's definitely not. Don't think you have to do a whole tour of the UK if you plan on applying there.
For sure, thanks. But have you only considered when applying the undergraduate programs in universities, or maybe like grandes écoles in France, with or without the prépa program?
So I wasn't really into Parcoursup, I have to say. I was kind of dead set on going to the UK because the programs looked more interesting. It kind of suited my profile better. So yeah, well, back in my day, it was cheaper the UK. So I know a lot more people used to go there. So with my friends, we kind of just zoomed through Parcoursup and just focused a lot on UCAS. But I mean, overall, no, I didn't. I'm looking at it now for master's degrees, but at undergraduate, I basically only focused on the UK.
And did you consider like other countries, even not the US, but maybe
Did I?
Europe?
Not the US because I was kind of behind on SATs and preparation, and it's it's expensive, whatever. So I did apply to France to a couple things, but no, I was basically full UK. So yeah, I'm gonna be able to tell you a lot more about it than Camilla did do it. So I guess maybe.
And you said you're only doing undergraduate in England. Does this mean that it's your third year and that's over?
I'll see. I guess I'm applying to a bunch of different master's program in and outside of the UK. So, I mean, I'd like to go out of the UK because, once you've done 3 years there, I think it's important to kind of explore the world and go to different places. But I certainly wouldn't mind staying there because unis are really good. So it's my third year. So after this, no more undergraduate. I graduate in June, but after that, I don't know yet. I see where it'll take me.
That's awesome. And in the UK specifically, what other universities did you consider?
So in my UCAS list, I applied to Cambridge, I applied to LSE, I applied to King's, I applied to Warwick, I applied to York. So that was my 5 unis. So the story is, I did the Cambridge exams. I got a place in the interviews. I didn't get in at the interviews. Then I didn't get into LSE, but I got into King's, I got into Warwick, and I got into York. And I was like, King's the coolest because I was like, oh, what is this war studies thing? It's pretty cool. And so I went to King's and I don't regret it.
And you applied for the same type of degree everywhere?
So that's kind of, I'm definitely going to go back to this when I talk about war studies more specifically. But I applied to history and politics everywhere. So war studies was the only program that was different. And so when I did my personal statement, I didn't talk about war studies specifically. I talked about history and politics. But they're used to that. The war studies admissions people at King's, they know that since it's the only place in the UK where you can do war studies, they don't expect you to say it specifically. So no, everywhere else I applied history and politics, and obviously history, politics, it's kind of war studies, so it did work out at the end.
Yeah, and I know this isn't the main topic that we're going to talk about, but a little parenthesis, you said you did the interview at Cambridge.
Yeah.
How did it go? What kind of questions did they ask you? More in general knowledge or specific to your subject?
Well, I thought it went okay, but clearly it didn't go okay enough, but I don't really mind. I think it was cool. It's definitely stressful because you're kind of in this big waiting room with a bunch of other brilliant people, and they're visibly brilliant, and then the teachers you go into are even more visibly brilliant, and so I think they're not looking for basic answers. They're looking for people who stand out, and I think when you go in there you should definitely put yourself on your best foot and be original. I think that's definitely, if anyone's watching this for Cambridge interview advice, stand out, be proactive. At some point they asked me, they looked at the essay I sent in. They're like, is there anything you would change about the essay? And then I was really happy about that essay, and I was like, you know what? And the moment I said, not really. And I think I should have said something, because that's a typical mistake. Don't stay on your ecchi, don't stay with what you're comfortable for. Just go for it and show that you're ambitious and you have more to offer than the others.
Sounds like good advice. Did you have to prepare for it?
Well, we did have preparation. I went to see Mrs. Davis for a while every week to prepare for the interviews and stuff. So if you do want to do Oxbridge, they do prepare you well. Mrs. Davis, Mr. Bunch. But yeah, no, I did have some preparation for it. Yeah.
Oh, it's good that our school provides this. This sounds really helpful. And to go back on a more general basis about the UK application process, it's the most common one is UCAS, right? Yeah. Or the only one?
I think it's the only one.
One. Could you talk a little bit about yourself? How did it go for you? And when did you start the process? And what did you do? Did you have to? You talked about your motivational letter. Did you have to do any tests, like you said, interview prep also?
So I started UCAS the summer before première, so quite a bit in advance. I mean, you can only start so much back then, so but you are, like, I do want to say, you are pretty well accompanied throughout the process. If you know how to get a hold of Mr. Bunch and company, it is pretty good. So the key of UCAS and what they talk to you a lot about is the personal statement. So the motivational letter, it's called the personal statement, and that's kind of the main thing that sets you apart from the others, because it's where you explain who you are, why you want to do this, and why they should take you in, right? And so the personal statement, there's plenty of stuff online on how to write a personal statement. Basically, the entire population of the UK studies in the UK, and therefore, looks for ways to do personal statements. I went to a few summer camps in the UK, debate camps, where they had, little workshops on how to write a personal statement, blah, 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 which I guess is kind of helpful. But it's really up to you. And I guess there's only so much advice that can help. And so it's really, again, about having a clear idea of why you want to go there. So they don't take people who are like, I thought it was a riot, it was a pretty good idea. It's like, no, I want to go to the UK because it allows me to do this, and I'm going to be good at it because I've done this and this and this, and I'm really excited for this particular program because I was really good at it at school, because I did extra stuff on it, because I like history and I go to a bunch of museums and all that stuff. So it's about if you're passionate about it, this is where you show it, and you better show it well.
Yeah, you have to show that you know what you want.
Yeah,
that's a good thing. So you start to write kind of the like you said, the essay during your summer before première.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people say, I think Bunch says it. You're like, you have to think about it, and then one day you just write it all in one day, and then you never look at it again. I don't think that's the best idea. Obviously, you should look at it again, show your mom, whatever. But I think everyone has a different way of going about it, and so it's really personal. It is a personal statement.
And during your time at EGM, was there something to go back to more of your time in high school, was there something that you learned or were exposed to in school that really helped you in pursuing your higher education in the UK?
Well, I really liked history classes. I was pretty good at it, and so I was like, I'm going to do history and politics. Not much politics at school. I think it's different now. You have this like
spécialité HGSP, which is like, that's great. You would have totally chosen it.
I would have. I left too early. But well, not too early. So obviously, do what you like to do, because there's no point in applying for a program that's going to lead you to great things, but it's going to make you miserable while you're there. And so what they always say, especially at uni, is this is kind of like the only really years in your life where you can explore what really interests you without caring too much about, future careers, future stuff, because if you do stuff that you like, you're going to be good at it, and that's always going to be better than, thinking, I don't know, if you want to get rich but you don't like math, don't do finance, right? Because it's going to make your life miserable, right? And if you do like math and finance, it's a great thing, but always do stuff that you find fascinating, and then it's always going to work out afterwards. So don't think about that stuff yet. So definitely, apply to stuff that you like at school. If you don't like anything at school, there's definitely, a wide variety of programs in the UK. So we never do psychology at school, but there's some great psychology programs in the UK. We never do, sociology. We never do all sorts of things. But there's definitely ways you can learn more about these programs and these subjects. And so, so first thing, definitely, do what you like. At school, what I did that probably pushed me most towards war studies and history and international relations was, debate club, doing Model United Nations. Do the debate club, it's great, teaches you a lot. And so that's something I put in my personal statement. It's like, this is how I learned about, global issues, about conflict resolution, about finding solutions and stuff. And it's not as common in the UK. And so
debate club?
Debating, Model UN. Oh. Not common, not as common.
What do they do, not general?
So when I went to summer camps there, they do different formats, such as UK Parliament style debates, which is They do MACE style debates. They do World Schools. It's just a bunch of different formats. It's very different from Model UN, and it's very competitive. They're very competitive about debating in the UK. So which is good because if you do it here, they recognize that. But if you do it differently, such as MUN, it's pretty good as well. So that's what pushed me to get an interest in international affairs and relations and war studies. And then what else did I do? I took Chinese, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something that in the future enables me to use the languages I learned. And so definitely, I'll talk about it later, but the ability to work in diplomacy, to work in international organizations, that's pretty good. So yeah, that's about it. That's what convinced me to go there. But yeah, there's definitely so many things you can do at school to kind of dig deeper into the interest you have. You should really take every opportunity, even if it's like a lot of work extra compared to what you have. I know it's, my brother has the same problem right now. It's definitely always worth it because when you write your personal statement, it's that much more ammunition you have to really show them to show them that you're really into what you're going to do.
Yeah, I also do debate for a while now, for 3 years, and I think it's super useful. Even though I'm not specifically thinking of doing studies in like you said, like politics or even history. It's great for public speaking and just learning about history and all those issues and argumenting. I think it's really good.
Totally.
And you mentioned talking about it in your essay, personal statement. Was it difficult to really be concise? Because I imagine there's not a lot of words. I mean, you can use.
Well, I mean, if you have to be concise, that's good because that means you have a lot to talk about. So definitely that's a good sign. But there's always ways to be more concise. Kind of like the big thing you learn when you start writing essays. Is that if you have a lot of information, it's actually quite easy to take out words, and they only care about words. And so there's really, plenty of ways of saying stuff in a more concise way. And the shorter the sentence is, the better it is, because if you hit them with a bunch of things without, going into great, expression magnifique or whatever, it's gonna be better. So definitely, yeah. But it doesn't really matter the word count. You can always make it more concise, and some people are better at it than others.
There's no limit. There is, but not.
See, that's what I forget. I'm pretty sure there is a word limit. There definitely is a word limit.
But it's not crazy.
It's not. No.
Okay.
Definitely. And you have so much advice available on feedback on your personal statements. Even your parents are probably pretty good at cutting down on words if they've done higher education or whatever. So definitely, yeah, it's not a problem.
Perfect. And to talk more about your high school experience, activities you did, and you mentioned debate for sure. Did you participate in any Olympiads or competitions?
Did I?
Any subject, really?
Not really. I don't think so. No.
Okay. And maybe, did you mention any volunteering work in your application?
I did not do any volunteering work. For the high school diploma thing, chaired debate, which counted beyond.
Oh, you did chair.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. That's a really good thing.
Very good. Okay. Also, if that's what I tell, my brother's doing debate right now. There's only so much you can do as a debate student, and I think by première, you're gonna get so much more out of debate club if you can chair. That's definitely something you should try to do.
And I'm thinking of it. Obviously, I think everyone is who does debate as a student. Is it hard to become a chair? Do you really have to prove it, or
no?
Because I thought there's not a lot of places to be a chair.
Well, you have to be persistent. You have to be there often. I don't know how debate club has changed, to be honest, but. When I was there, I just asked Miss Harvey, and I applied on some Google form or something, and they allowed up to 3 chairs per class, and there's a lot of people, so I don't think they really run out of spots. But it's definitely based on experience and your ability to teach and your students. But once you're a chair, it's really easy.
Awesome.
There's a bunch of people in your year that I taught. When I have really fun memories of chairing. It's a real human experience teaching people. And it really does make you a better debater and a better teacher. And it's something I used again when I taught people at my MUN society at King's. So
awesome.
Everything you do, you can reuse. So definitely try to chair. It's good.
Yeah, I know. I was just wondering if it's very competitive to get the place, but good to know.
I don't know how it is now, but for me, it wasn't.
Okay, we'll see then. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
And so overall, what do you think made you stand out the most on in your application?
In my application, well, you don't really get feedback from the people who say yes. So I couldn't really tell you what they thought of it. But, you know, definitely, as I said in the advice, you know, knowing what you want to do, showing that you're passionate and that you have, you know, the experiences to back it up. It's not just, I think I'm going to like this, I'm going to like this because...
Okay, so a good personal statement.
Yes,
okay.
Of course.
And for your application process, was there any, like, for King's or other universities, I imagine Cambridge, additional, like, exam requirements?
Yeah, so Oxbridge has this special thing where you have to apply earlier, which is why I started earlier in the summer, because you have to give it in by, like, October or something, which is quite early compared to the other deadlines. And then you do take an exam where, you know, they filter out some people, and then you can go to the interview. That's November, I think, around that, November, December. And then if you do get the interview, you get an offer, conditional offer. So you have to get a certain grade on the back.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but it's the only two universities that have this special system where they do extra exams and stuff. The rest, it's only based on your UCAS application.
And no interview, no test
Nope.
for King's. Okay. And how did you prepare for the exam? Like maybe
for Cambridge?
For Cambridge, like
Yeah.
textbooks,
So
tutors?
Mr. Bunch and Mrs. Davis are, you know, they really want to put people into Oxbridge, of course, and so they prepare you quite well. So I know for me what happened is the end of of première, they selected like some people, and they were like, okay, you're gonna apply to Oxbridge, and I was like, oh, cool. And so you have to show them before that you're interested in, you know, you have to maybe reach out to them, say, hey, I'd really like to apply to this is good. So that's why you should always contact them. They know how to do stuff, and then they do prepare you. You have they give you like some textbooks and stuff, I think, to prepare, and then they make you do like mock exams and stuff. I think we did like 2-3 mock exams, so you're quite well prepared, and then you do mock interviews if you get in after the exam. So yeah, there is quite a bit of preparation that goes into it. For in the end, not that big of a chance of getting in, but who knows? You know, it's definitely worth it to try.
Worth a try, yeah. And to go talk in regards to like grades for King's College, is it like important for students to be good in every single subject, or do they like understand that you can't really be talented everywhere, and it's important to be good in your own subject?
Overall, they definitely understand if you don't have great grades in math, for example, if you're not going to go do math. I think there's definitely like something they look for, and that's what I tell, you know, my brother, or just like people in general. It's like the comments you have on your, you know, on your transcripts, on your bulletin. That's definitely something they're going to look at more than the grades, because you might not be a particularly gifted student in science. I wasn't, but if the commentaries show that you actually try, you know, that you're giving it your best, that you're really trying, it's not your fault really. Then they're really, it's okay, you know. But if you're not really good and you kind of give up on the topic and whatever, and you're like, oh, the commentaries, you know, doesn't focus in class, doesn't really care, then, you know, but they definitely focus mostly on the subjects that do matter. And so, for example, when they make you an offer, I had to get a 16 overall and 15 minimum in history and geography, for example, because that's what, you know, that's the main course I took that had to correspond to war studies. So they definitely look more at, you know, the topics, the classes that are going to matter for your undergraduate.
You said like contacting Mr. Bunch and like your college counselors in advance. How much in advance? For example, did you contact them in seconde or later?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
But do you think that's early? Like,
well, I think you can have meetings with counselors in seconde, and I'm pretty sure they advise it, because that way when première comes around and they're busy with everyone, then, you know, you've seen them a couple times, well, at least once before, to talk about, you know, what you want to do. And if you do really want to do Oxbridge, I'm pretty sure it's almost mandatory, because they need to know you to be able to say, you're gonna apply, and then so they can coach you for because I'm pretty sure they don't even allow you to apply to Oxbridge if they haven't pre-selected you before, which is something I don't know if it was like this widely known. I was kind of surprised when they were like, oh, come to this thing, and it was just like 20 of us, 25, and they were like, okay, you guys are going to Oxbridge. I was like, oh, okay, this is like the special club. So definitely don't miss out if you want to go there. You don't have to, of course. It's not for everyone. But yeah, so I think it's always a good idea to in seconde at least get maybe one meeting with any of the counselors in whatever university you want to go to
let them know, and you just email them and they will be
it's always a good idea to email the teachers. They're always more disponible than you think they are.
Okay.
So yeah,
thank you, good to know. You graduated in 2020, which was a pretty special time, especially for seniors. So how did you personally live your third trimester of terminale, where you had to where you're working on Zoom and
I did. It's a special time, I think, for everyone. I think it was the easiest trimester I had ever, because you know how it was. We didn't even have to really listen. I shouldn't say this. This is bad. And then we just had évaluation continue, so we didn't even have the bac. Which worked out well for me, because then they also pumped up our grades quite a bit to make sure that we met the offers we got for the conditions for going into the universities. And after that, month of June was like full party. It was a good time, honestly.
It's definitely different for different students. Like some were really counting on the back, some weren't, but it's definitely because our school is harder in general during the whole year, so it was necessary for the grades. And when you got into your first year of university, were you it was quarantine, right, still?
Yeah.
Did you live on campus or with your parents in Paris?
So when I got into King's, I had to go in like 2 weeks before for quarantine. And so I lived in a student accommodation, which is basically how everyone lives in London, especially. And so I lived, at Great Dover Street accommodation for King's in London. And so first year was it's strange, but you just meet people there in your accommodation, and it certainly did not prevent me from meeting people and having fun. So I do have fond memories of first year. Definitely.
That's good. Despite that, that's good to hear. So now you've had the chance to get to know the community, obviously after the whole COVID thing, quarantine. So how's your college, King's Army higher education experience been like for you so far?
Yeah, it's been good. Should I talk about war studies?
I was gonna ask you, how you why you chose a specific degree of war studies. How did you come to this decision, and what made you choose to complete alongside the military training? Like, was it mandatory or was it a personal choice?
It's completely personal choice. So there's no kind of partnership or stuff between the army and war studies. And I know one other person who does war studies who goes to the military. But I'm definitely convincing more to do now because it's pretty cool. So war studies, it's a great program. It's very specialized, and some people go into it. Well, everyone goes into it not really knowing what it is, which is something I aim to tell you about here. And some people really like it when they go in there, as I do, and some people like it less because it's very specialized right from the get-go. And so compared to international relations, it's very focused, and it's only at King's, obviously, and it's very focused on war. So in the first year, you go in and they teach you about Clausewitz, about theories of war. They teach you about the three modules I had were the conduct of war, so the evolution of how war was conducted, from the sword to the rifle, to how strategies evolved all the way to World War II. And then I had the experience of war, which is how different people write about war, how they experience it from the civilian point of view, from the military point of view. And then I had causes of war, which is more international relations, kind of what are the factors in the international system which make two states go fight. And so it's, as you can tell, it's pretty focused. but it does, it does use international relations theory, it uses politics, it uses history. So it's multidisciplinary, which is what they say all the time. Well, we're a very multidisciplinary course. But it does make it quite accessible. And so if you're into history, into that kind of stuff, as I was, it's really, you have fantastic teachers, experts, world-renowned, and you realize once you go in that it's actually a lot more renowned than you think it is at first. And so I know people who kind of get, okay, you didn't get into, I don't know, history and international relations, but we can't put you, into war studies. It's all right. People are like, oh, okay, I guess. Whereas war studies is like a lot more recognized than like a lot of the courses at King's. And it is really cool. So definitely don't count it out. It's a lot of the people I talk about for, graduate studies are like, damn, war studies. Really good. So it is a great program, and they tell you a lot about it on the King's like information page on it. But it is, it's really interesting if you're into kind of war, I guess, but more broadly international relations, history, politics. There's everything for you there, and you can specialize in different parts of it as you go along. So yeah, it's really cool.
We'll go back to this, but I was also thinking while you were explaining that there's actually a lot of like career paths that that you can follow after doing this degree, because it's very, like you said, multidisciplinary.
Yeah, exactly.
And in regards to your military training, which is it's like a technical part and like a practical more part where you get to actually train military. Like, what are the pros and cons of going into the army?
So the army, it's kind of it's a weird decision, right? It's definitely not something that everyone thinks about. People who study abroad don't think about it because it's très français, right? And so you can only do it if you're a French citizen. So you basically join the Army Reserve, and so realistically, in case of a invasion of the country or something, or war breaking out in Ukraine, you send the army first, and then if the army people, start having trouble, you send in the Army Reserve. And so there's about 50,000 people in France who are part of this Army Reserve, and I'm one of them. And so basically the way it goes is you sign up on s'engager.fr, you go sign up for the Army Reserve. You choose the regiment you're going to go to. So they have different bases everywhere. Near Paris, there's an infantry regiment that most people join when they're from here. I go in the south because I have a house there, and so it's easier for me to go. So I'm in the 3e Régiment d'Artillerie de Marine. And so you sign up, you do an interview, and then you do 2 weeks of training, la formation militaire initiale du réserviste. And so during those 2 weeks, you learn how to be a soldier, which I think is pretty cool. And so you learn, how to, démonter, remonter une arme. You learn how to use the FAMAS. You know how to, garde à vous, how to walk in a straight line, how to salute, how to know how the different, ranks work and stuff. And so it's a tiring 2 weeks. Definitely the military. It's not, for the faint of heart. They do put you through quite a lot. But it is a very, very good experience, and it teaches you a lot about, you meet people that you would never meet otherwise. You meet, people from all across the country, and you do things that, you don't necessarily are exposed to, but it's good to expose you to those kinds of things. For me, it's been a great life experience, and, it builds character a lot. And so I think for students like us, it works great because you have a lot of time, especially if you're in the UK. You have a lot of time. You have few classes per week, a lot of work, but then you can kind of work around the workload. So you go there afterwards, basically, if you can. It's up to you, really, but you can definitely try to go there every month. If you don't, you can go every 2 months or 3 months. They don't really care as long as you show up from time to time. And so you go there for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there you do military training. You see all the people you made friends with during your 2 weeks, and you basically learn how to be a soldier. And you get paid for it quite well. Quite well. You get about 150 euros for the 3 days, and then if you're a student, you get 100 euros per month. So it does add up quite a bit at the end. It's obviously better if you're in France because it's cheaper to go, but so since we have so many vacations, I just went there during December because I was here already. I went there all summer, and so basically once you do that, you do start getting quite a bit of money. It is pretty nice, when you're a student to think about revenue and stuff. And it's, for 3 days a month, I think it's pretty worth it. And then you can do operations, you can do sentinelle, the militaire we see patrolling around Paris. You can, be one of them, patrolling, saving France from terrorism, whatever. I think it's pretty cool. And it's, it's a good citizen engagement thing. And I do feel quite good about, being in the French Army Reserve. It makes me feel good about myself. And I just have a bunch of fun, really. It's just, I think it's really fun. So it's not necessarily, like an internship. It's not recognized as such for like future career prospects. But I do think it brings something special to your profile. And it does teach you a lot of skills, and just like you get knowledge about, the French Army, the French military establishment, and just in general, especially for war studies. It is quite useful.
And like you said, a completely different experience. Like people don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And like you said, your profile, like you get experiences that other people don't have the chance to.
Exactly. And I think, we all have the JDC, so like the day, you don't have it yet. I think when you turn 18 you have to. There's like a whole day where you have to mandatorily go and learn about, the French Army, kind of citizen involvement stuff. You'll see that later. People don't really care about it. They don't really listen. But that is when, the French government kind of tell you about the reserve. And so I hope to be more convincing than them, because they're not really into it. But it is, honestly, if you do want to get kind of a cooler side job, it's basically how I think about it. It is a side job. I go there, every month. And the stuff I do is much better than, your average bartending. So it is definitely something everyone should consider. It's not for everyone, of course. Some people don't want to, kind of go lay in the mud with a rifle and shoot for like 3 days. But I think it's pretty sick. So definitely everyone should look into it and see if it's for them.
And you said it builds character, and I can imagine for sure being in the army. But is it like stressful?
Oh, it's very stressful. But it's stressful at first when you don't know what you're doing.
Okay.
And then it's really satisfying when you start knowing what you're doing, and you really, get, and you can go up the ranks and stuff. So you start as a basic, première classe soldier. Then you can go up to corporal, you can become a sergeant, you can go even become an officer if you want, if you spend enough time and you show that you have what it takes. And so it's a really rewarding experience. It's kind of like this completely different part of my life that I've discovered, and it's like, oh well, no one else does this. This is pretty sick.
And they're strict about like stuff. I mean,
they're very strict.
Okay.
That's why we don't get yelled at a lot in life. And sometimes it's a good humbling experience to be yelled at for stuff. Well, you did really fuck up, didn't you? Or you messed up. And so it does teach you a lot, and I think you just have to experience it really to see what it's like. But I know I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people who do it with me do enjoy it, and quite a few uni students actually go there that I learned about. So I think it is quite a fun thing to do.
Really
for boys and girls. There's a lot of girls in my unit. It's about 1/4 girls, which is better than most other militaries in the world. So there is, and they're badass, and they do a lot of cool stuff, and they're very cool. They're very nice people. So definitely something to consider.
And if I get this right, in your reserve, there's only like French citizens, like you said. So you speak French, and
it's totally French.
So it's interesting to have this community while you're in England of French people.
It is really cool. And I met some of them in Paris the other day, and some of them might visit me in London and stuff. And you just make, it's a different way of making friends. But when you're living under a tent in the rain for like 3 days with a person in the tent, well, you kind of automatically make friends in a way that you can't really make friends with someone you just met at the party in London. And so I do think, I laugh a lot when I'm there, because I'm like, what the f*** am I doing here? But it's always a good time, it's really funny.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. It sounds super interesting to me. And more about London. How do you like studying there? Is the big city not too distracting?
London is great. London is a cool city, especially because the life we live in London is it's very independent. It's where you learn how to cook for yourself. It's where you learn how to manage your bills and your flat. And this is where you meet so many people, and it's completely a student city. Everything's made for students to have fun, spend money, of course, because they want our money. So it is expensive. but it's always a good time. I love living in London. It's really great. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of French people, so if you're worried about that, don't worry. Don't stick only with the French people, but definitely, if it's not too much of a leap from your comfort zone. A lot of EJM people as well. Yeah,
especially since UCL is not far away.
Yeah,
like a lot of people go there.
I see. Well, the people I met at the alumni event the other day, a lot of them I've seen pretty regularly. So it's all right, And no, life there it's pretty good. I know a lot of people in the campus unis have a good time, but they also come to London to visit quite a bit. So I would say London, it's probably one of the best places in the world to study because the unis are good and the life there is awesome and pretty, really accessible for students. So no, it's a good time.
And you mentioned like independence, that it teaches you many skills.
Yeah.
Like, does living in a different country, you think it makes your experience more rich and interesting? Or do you think it's harder because it adds like more responsibilities and takes away time from your studies?
I don't think it takes away time from your studies. I think you're always gonna find time to work. Of course, there's this work-fun balance you have to manage. I think even if you stay in France, it's definitely going to be a different experience because you're growing older and you have a lot of new things to consider and to think about. But I know that people. Well, it depends where you study. But if you kind of stay at home when you study in France, you definitely don't have this experience of going to live away from your parents and have to manage everything on your own, your budget, your food, your living places, what you do as a whole. It's like you learn how to do laundry, you learn how to wash the dishes, there's so much you have to learn. And so I think that definitely living abroad, first of all, it's obviously much more enriching than kind of staying where you've been living your whole life. And you meet so many different people. In London, it's so international. I have friends from places you wouldn't believe I didn't fucking know existed. So it's just you meet a lot of people, you stay with the cool ones, and you make a lot of friends, and you just kind of completely broaden your horizon. And so I think that's why studying abroad, they don't really talk about it necessarily, and like when they tell you, oh, go to study in Canada, go study or stay in France. But I think that even if you stay in France, you definitely should look for like something that has an exchange year, because living abroad, there's nothing like it. Really.
And that's definitely a thing for living abroad. But what about England specifically? I mean, I know you didn't study in the U.S. or France or other countries, but what do you think is like different for the UK to be a student there?
What do you mean what's different?
It's different as opposed to like studying in America or in France.
Yeah, well, it is unique
like
because you're like, it's cheaper than in the US, which obviously is a big thing, and you're less far away from Paris, and so I know for a lot of people it's easier to come back for the holidays. When you have reading week, which is our 1 week of vacation every term, you can go back to France if you want. For me, I can go back to the army because it's not too far, and if I was in the US, I definitely wouldn't do it. So being able to be pretty close to home but then again, when you live there, you feel very far away from home, which is a good thing. So definitely, compared to the US to Canada, you're close, but you also, get the best of both worlds because you're living independently in an English-speaking country, which is always really fun. And so compared to France, I think it does have quite a few advantages. But then again, a lot of people from France kind of visit us in London very often, and they just get the best of it because they just go out with us and have a good time and then just can go back home. And so I think whatever you do, it's always going to be a good time. That's why university is so great. And so just don't think there's like a special way to go. It's always up to what you want to do. But studying in London, yeah, it's fun.
No, these are interesting things to consider because when choosing, especially know what's special about one country and the other, even like the application process is very different, and all those different factors are good to take into account. And I was wondering about the King's College community. What is it like? Like professors, clubs, maybe a lot of international students like you mentioned?
There's a lot of French people at King's. That's in London in general, but at King's especially. That's something you'll find. So there's this developed French society where you can meet a lot of French people. If you go beyond that, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of societies. So societies are kind of like the core of the student community. There's an MUN society, so I was part of that. I was on the committee. I taught people how to do MUN and stuff, and we have socials, and we go to conferences, and it's a great time. I'm in the Rifle Society, where it's just a bunch of people who like so there's this like shooting range under Kings, which is like crazy, and so we just go there every week and just kind of shoot targets and stuff, which is pretty fun. So whatever you like to do, there's definitely a society that's been created about it, and so you should definitely check it out, because societies just make the whole experience so much better. That's how you meet a lot of friends. And so the student community overall, I found them to be super friendly. You'd think that there's like a lot of assholes when there's that many people, because there's like 45,000 people at King's. But turns out just most of them are super nice. And so the ability to just meet so many different people and just stick with the ones you prefer and just like create a friend group is just so fun. So the community, really cool.
That's good. And about like living on campus, it's definitely special because it's like in the city, right? So it's not a very big campus. I can imagine it's like
it's pretty big.
It's big,
but it's no, it's not. It's not like massive like some like countryside campuses.
Exactly.
Like so like campuses like Warwick, massive, but it is pretty impressive because it's in the center, and so we definitely don't run out of room for like study spaces or stuff, and it does mean that you have access to everything around it. So if you want to go for after work drinks, well, there's all of London to visit, and if you want to go, I don't know, for a walk in Hyde Park, where it's right there, so it does have a lot of advantages, and the campus itself is beautiful, so it definitely, and they just renovated part of it, and so now it's even cooler. So
awesome.
Very
Good for
cool.
you guys.
Yeah.
And so you said that you're finishing this year your undergraduate studies, and you're thinking of obviously continuing where you're going to study for masters. So what are your plans? What do you want to do after
All right.
this?
So I really liked war studies, and so I was like, I'm going to continue in this vein, and so I'm applying to masters basically around security studies. And international security. So I applied to Sciences Po, didn't get in, but it is pretty hard to get into, and so I decided to apply to other hard to get in stuff. So I applied to Oxford yesterday. I applied to Cambridge. I'm gonna apply to stuff in Brussels, stuff in the Netherlands, maybe stuff in France, but the deadlines for those are a bit later, and I have a lot of work in 30 years. So but basically what I'm trying to do, it's work in international security, maybe work in diplomacy afterwards, maybe work as a security analyst in a think tank, maybe work for, I don't know, the UN, NATO, OSCE, these kinds of organizations. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities that it leads to. I have friends who do war studies that want to work in journalism, become, I don't know, a war correspondent, which is pretty cool. I could, if I wanted to, but I don't. But if I could just join the army as an officer, I could do that because war studies teaches you a lot about it. So it leads to so many different things. But international security, that's what I'm focused on.
So it opens a lot of paths.
Yeah.
And from your experience, what piece of advice would you give to young listeners who want to study at King's College like you, and especially war studies?
What advice would I give? So definitely join societies. It's a good time. If you are doing war studies, the professors are excellent and they love to talk to students. So office hours are the way to go. Like that's what I tell everyone who's like first year war studies. And you want to get good grades on your essays, talk to teachers, and it makes everything so much more interesting and so much easier. And just in general, don't be afraid to like go out of your comfort zone. Like there's like this group of people from like this society that are like planning a social, and you're like, I don't really know them. I'm not sure I want to go. Just go, find out, see how it is. And I think London, it's such a cool place to study. King's is such a cool place to study. And the people there are so nice that you really can't go wrong. That's why there's not that much advice except like live it to the fullest, and like only good things will come to you.
Well, thank you very much, Marc, for coming today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I learned a lot of interesting and useful things for myself, and I hope that the information that Marc shared today will be useful to listeners of the podcast as well.
Very cool. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Anxious Scholar podcast. See you in 2 weeks for the next interview, and don't miss out on any additional information on our Instagram at The Anxious Scholar.